Tim, the theme of MIXX this year is fueling interactive advertising's creative revolution. What does creativity mean to you?
Well, I think, when I think about what creative means to me, and really the subject of the MIXX conference is, creative. So when you take a step back and you think about creativity, I think a lot of times it comes with empowering people who are actually want to be creative and have a chance to be creative. And I think there are a lot of platforms actually on the web today that allow creativity, and I think moving the next generation of creatives into spaces that are really scaled and give them the opportunity to kind of, highlight their creativeness, but also to connect in a more creative way with end users. So I think it's a mix of bringing more creative people to the online space. And the second piece is actually to use the distribution that online offers, and I think you're actually seeing it today, but I would expect the web to really have an explosion of creativity over the next 3 to 5 years.
Everyone's saying how the roles of marketers, agencies, and publishers has changed and even merged in some respects. How has this trend impacted your work?
So when I think, anyone who's in the, the publishing space in general, when you think about how much things have changed and the role of a client and agency, a publisher, I really think you have to actually start with flexibility, which is, I think a lot of cases, the world is changing because the needs are actually changing. I mean, I think it's easy to say, hey, people have new strategies and they want to change the relationships between those three entities. But it's really about the fact that the world has changed in terms of how consumers behave, and it may require more alignments or changes in alignment between the publisher, agency, and client. And I think right now is a great time period for people to test it. I think if you think about what Procter & Gamble has been doing and other large advertisers like that, they're expecting actually flexibility not only from the agency and the publishers, but also from themselves. And I think that flexibility piece will actually drive a lot of what the future roles end up being. I do think the future roles to a large semblance will remain intact, but they will shift different pieces underneath that. But now's the time to test and try it.
Can you tell us what you think is most important about MIXX and the IAB to the interactive industry?
Yeah, so the IAB I've had a long history with, and the founder of the IAB, Rich Lafergie, was my boss at Starwave, so I saw it from the early days on, and I think if you take a step back and think about it, I mean, the IAB was really the first way that people actually were able to get online with advertising and do it in a way that was organized. And I think when you fast forward today to what Randy Rothenberg has really brought to the IAB, I think what you see now is really thought leadership of not just sort of mechanically making the internet work for advertisers and agencies and publishers, but really to start thinking about what the future is and start aiming towards the future. So there's things like standards and guidelines and things the IAB does, but I think they also play a more crucial role, which is how do we actually get from the point we are today to where we can transition 20, 30, 40, $50 billion online. I think the IAB is a centerpiece for that.
What's the single most compelling trend in interactive media?
Yeah, so the most compelling trend I think I've seen in interactive media is really the changes in two things actually. I think one is distribution. I think you look at things like Twitter and Facebook and some of those platforms where users are actually helping guide what distribution they want and when they want it. I think that's an incredible opportunity for all of us in the publishing world. I think the second piece is, the recession has really changed how people think about interactive. Before it was a kind of slow migration and, it wasn't a necessity, and I think today is you're really seeing people put their time, energy, resources, and most importantly money into this very quickly, and I think the recession will end up in retrospect having been a big benefit for the interactive space.
What do you think today's consumer wants?
Sure. So one of the interesting things about my job at AOL is AOL has been struggling, and I think so we spend a lot of time thinking about this question is what consumers want. And really, if you look at the trends on the internet, consumers generally want simplicity, they want speed, they want accuracy, and they want to actually be able to personalize things in general. And I think that the future platforms of the internet are really going to be faster, better, cheaper for consumers. And I think the one thing that has been missing in a lot of cases from the internet is also entertaining. So I think when you mix in the simplicity and speed with entertainment, I think you will have a very large canvas for the consumers to have a very enjoyable, rich experience online.
What is the most important brand proposition for AOL?
Yeah, I think so. Brands are a big subject at AOL every day, and I think the biggest and best brand proposition is really one is the fragmentation piece. I think that we are able to build brands for the fragmented web, and actually the more the web is fragmenting, the more successful we've been at building brands that connect with audiences. So I think in our brand architecture, you have, you know, AOL as a globally known brand, but the exciting thing is we're also building brands that are starting to become globally known. Every time the web fragments and we can find distribution for a certain audience, you know, we typically now at this point have web properties for almost every piece of the distribution. And you know, that actually could be an exciting story, you know, 10 years down the road, as we have the AOL brand, which we're going to improve, but then we also have a stable of brands that actually people love and want to spend time with.
Tim, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.